Hey guys, Dr. J here, and just a quick video on some general operating considerations for UAVs. These are kind of miscellaneous topics that didn't really fit well somewhere else, so I'm just sticking them in here. Operating near or on airport property. There's kind of three situations to be aware of. One is that you can fly in, you can operate near an airport as long as you are not in controlled airspace. So if you are in or around an airport which is not in controlled airspace, you can fly there without any problems from the FAA. If you're at a private airport, for example, you obviously will have to get permission from the airport owner. So keep those kinds of things in mind. But in terms of the FAA and getting authorization, ATC authorization, you don't need to do that if you're in uncontrolled airspace. And there are a number of airports around the country that are in uncontrolled airspace. Now you can fly in controlled airspace if you have authorization from ATC. And basically, practically, the way that this works is that you can put in a LANC request. In most cases, this is going to be using one of the Before You Fly apps to submit a LANC request, and we'll do another video about that. But this is your general LANC request authorization. You can also get operations. I'm going to skip this bolded point here because we'll come back to that. You can also operate on an airport itself if you have proper authorization. It's going to take some additional time. So there's going to be some of those boxes. When you look at the LANC authorization request, it'll show you a grid over the airport. And some of those boxes are going to have zero elevation. So in other words, you're not allowed to fly there at all. In order to be able to fly there, you'll have to get authorization through the FAA's Drone Zone website. And we'll talk more about that and how to do that in another video. Bottom line, you must be aware of traffic patterns and identify where the high hazards are around you when you're operating in or near an airport. You'll need to be aware of planes coming in and out. You'll want to be aware of small aircraft in some cases. Even small airports are used for small planes or for hang gliders or for helicopters. So these are all things that you'll want to be aware of. Basically, just having a general awareness of what's going on, a general caution for doing things well and safely, and that will and that will be what you need to do. Flying the wire environment. So a lot of drone operations are done around towers or high lines, power lines, and these are things like inspections. So guided towers meaning towers that have lines connected to them from them to the ground to stabilize the tower, and power lines. These are going to be really high hazard areas for your drone, and in particular, if you're going to if you end up hitting that wire, that's really going to destroy your drone almost certainly. Wires are especially difficult to see, especially in the drone's camera, and especially under certain conditions, because they're thin, they're just thin and hard to see. And so the recommendation here is to do a pre-flight inspection. Walk through where you're going to fly, check for wires, and especially note those areas or those angles that are going to be hard to see. If you're flying just a regular mapping mission, try to avoid these highline environments, or fly well above. If you're going to be flying over them, make sure that you're well above anywhere where you would be close to running into a tower or a wire. So again, this is just kind of be aware of what's going on, use caution, use best judgment in terms of what's safe. Operations with lasers. This is kind of a weird one, but basically lasers are prohibited by the FAA to disrupt aviation activity, and that includes drones. So no one is allowed to shine a laser at a drone while it's being flown. And the reason behind this is because if someone flashes a laser at your drone, they are likely to do the same thing to a manned aircraft, and they need to be reported. So if you are aware of someone trying to shine a laser at your drone, tell them to stop politely, and if that doesn't work, then they need to be reported to the FAA or local law enforcement. Flying in the vicinity of a thermal plume, this is going to be around industrial systems, for example, power plants or large manufacturing facilities. These are going to cause turbulence, and these are going to interfere potentially with the electronics on your aircraft. So again, things to be aware of and to avoid if possible. And then a big one is actually birds. Birds, mostly birds of prey, I'll say, although certainly you want to be careful about all birds, but in particular, birds of prey such as eagles or hawks. These are birds that will attack your drone if they feel threatened by the drone. And this is not something that you want to get mixed up with. Birds, some of these birds are protected species. Some of them, they're in the US anyway, you can result in a fine if the bird is disturbed. So you need to just pay attention and be aware of birds of prey in your area, birds of prey especially, but certainly all birds you want to be aware of, and be careful. Don't be flying your drone if there are hawks or eagles flying around. Just a general guideline to follow. Bird TAM NOTAMs are related to birds activity, so there will be some NOTAMs released if there's, for example, special migrations or things happening, and you can check those on the NOTAMs webpage. Unmanned balloons. These are another kind of a weird one. Certain areas of the country have unmanned balloons that are tethered by a cable to the ground. And so this is a real hazard if you're flying a drone in the vicinity because, again, it's a cable, it's somewhat thin, it's hard to see, and there have actually been accidents where manned aircraft flew into the cables on these drones and crashed as a result. These are always going to be marked on the charts so that you can see them. You'll be able to identify before your mission where these are and avoid them.